This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 460, Preconfigured CMS Solutions. On today's show, we are talking about Preconfigured CMS Solutions, how they can help your business, and the best way to build them in Drupal with our guests Baddy, Sonja Breidert, and Dr. Christoph Breidert. We'll also cover Style Google Map as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guests today are Baddy and Dr. Christoph Breidert. Christoph is the co-founder and head of research and development at 1x Internet, a European Drupal agency with offices in Germany, Iceland, and Spain. Christoph is German and Danish and has a PhD in computer science and economics and has been working with Drupal for almost 18 years. Baddy is the CEO and co-founder of the same company. She has been on the board of directors for the Drupal Association for the past 6 years and now is part of the executive committee as a past chair. Baddy is Icelandic and has a degree in computer science and engineering and has been working with Drupal since 2007. Baddy and Christoph are also married and have 2 teenagers that already have joined a couple of Drupal events in their lifetime. Baddy and Christoph, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Also, Baddy, thank you for joining us for the last 4 weeks. It's been a pleasure having you on as guest host.
It's been fun. I'm going to miss our weekly meetings.
I'm Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development, and today my co-host is John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM.
Here I am. Hello, everyone.
And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what do we have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted to customize the way Google Maps appear on your Drupal site? There's a module for that. It's called Styled Google Map, and it was created in March of 2014 by I Am Puma, but recent releases are by Artem Dmitriev of 1x Internet. In terms of versions available, there is a 7.x-2.0, 8.x-1.7, and 8.x-2.6 versions available, the last of which works with Drupal 8, 9, 10, and 11. It is actively maintained. In fact, that latest release was just a week ago. There is security coverage, and for documentation, it has a documentation page as well as lots of information on the project page. It has 8 open issues, one of which is a bug against the current branch that was actually fixed in the latest release, which is pretty good considering it's in use by 1,764 sites, according to Drupal.org. Now, the module allows your Drupal site to use custom styles for maps, which you can copy and paste from snazzymaps.com or create from scratch using a configuration widget on GitHub that is linked from the project page. You will be able to use custom markers by using the System Stream Wrapper module, and you can also specify pop-ups for the markers using a field or a view mode. If you use the companion Styled Google Views module, you can also show multiple locations and define clustering options. Styled Google Maps also has integration with Google's directions service, so visitors can easily get turn-by-turn directions for how to reach their chosen location. The module also includes a demo submodule so that you can use to quickly set up a working example to illustrate all the different options available using Styled Google Map. So let's talk about Styled Google Map.
This sounds like a really cool module. I've built styled maps in the past, and I remember this would have been almost 10 years ago, though, so I think it was significantly harder back then. And we ended up having to use Leaflet. So I'm curious how this compares with Leaflet. It looks like with Snazzy Maps, it's almost, assuming it has a style that you want, it's almost drop in for replacement of styles. Is that accurate?
So that's certainly my understanding. I will confess I haven't actually had a chance to use this one myself. Like you, Nick, I've definitely tended to go the Leaflet route more in the past. And, certainly from the sounds of this module, it sounds like it's much simpler to sort of go through the UI, as you say, potentially copy and paste from Snazzy Maps. So definitely one I'm interested to try out myself as well.
So I think, Christoph, this is probably one of your projects.
Yeah, I was involved creating this module. So when you go to Snazzy Maps, you can just copy a JavaScript object that contains all the configuration that Google Maps expects to render itself beautifully. Yeah, and Snazzy Maps has a huge inventory of differently styled maps, of all types. And
Yeah.
usually, like in the past, we used this a lot, especially like for maybe campaign websites where location is important. Yeah, and then you have like some fancy style to that campaign site. Then you're looking for a map, and then you're just much faster if you just take something that's pre-configured and you just paste it in, and then you start playing with it until it just fits to the style of the campaign website. Yeah, and that's how this all originally came. It has evolved quite a bit. So we also did larger projects based on styled Google Map, where you just have all these integrations that you see, like with maps, Europe maps. So we did, for example, large energy provider, where you just have all these solar panels across Europe, and then you could just like see them all, and they would be clustered, and then you zoom in, and the cluster expands and so forth, all with custom icons and pop-ups and so forth, and completely in style with the with the corporate design like of this energy provider's website. Yeah, so it has quite evolved a bit. But what's really nice, that's why we also like to maintain it a lot, is because there's such a low barrier of entry. I mean, you just turn it on, and you have Google Maps out there and on your website, and then you paste in the style, and it looks awesome right away.
I can also, as a site builder, like I was always more on that side. Like I used it so many times, and it was so easy for a site builder to use. So like try it out. Definitely worth it.
Will do. And on the configuration side, is it like a field formatter? Is that how you determine which style it is, or is it site wide? You choose a style, and every map on the site is going to have that.
It's per map. I also have to say, like, I haven't been involved in like setting this up recently, so I actually don't remember anymore like how this was built like under the hood. Yeah, but it's definitely not site wide. It's not like that you just like put for the whole website, like a single style and that's applied everywhere. It's per instance. Yeah, and it just styles like the output of the Google Maps field, and it's just custom as you want to have it.
Very cool.
Sorry, I've gone down the rabbit hole of looking at different styles of maps and playing with them. This is very cool, and I would like to applaud Martin, because originally I was kind of like, how does Google Maps make any sense for today's topic? Usually things are more tightly integrated, but as we're talking to two folks from 1X Internet, I now understand the connection, and as usual, on topic and very relevant. So, Google Maps, style Google Maps are interesting, and I look forward to looking through this.
I also wanna do a little shout out to our team, because if you go on the module page, you will actually see how well it is like formatted, and they have been like, they created like an icon for product browser. So one of the contribution, like a non-code contribution in our team, has been like to actually make all of our modules look awesome on Drupal.org. So that's a great entry for people who are like, how can I get to do a contribution, and our designers. So this is like a good example of like, there's an icon there for the product browsers. There's actually it's as nicely done as possible on Drupal.org. So check it out because of that too.
And that takes a lot more effort than people realize, I think, writing a clear module page. I mean, it's very easy to see kind of what you need. It's nothing like my modules, which are usually just a half of a paragraph description of what it does. Do you have a template for that, by the way, or is it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so.
Yeah, we do. So we try to make them all look nice and kind of look the same. So we didn't invent it. We just like looked around what other people did and like compiled the best of, and then we try to reuse it everywhere. Reason also why we do it is like this module is just not it doesn't have so many installations, but I think it's just good for Drupal to just make this look professional. So especially for the new user, I mean, if you're experienced, like everyone here, maybe it doesn't matter for you like how fancy the module page looks, but I think for new users, adopters, evaluators, I mean, it's really important that this looks super professional.
Yeah, it is a nice looking module page, and it's making me think about the modules that I maintain, going back and revisiting those. But
if Martin were to adopt this, it would take up years of his life, I think.
Yeah, with the number of modules I maintain, there's no way I could do them all anywhere near this fancy. So definitely appreciate the work your team has done to make it, give give it that level of finish.
All right. Thank you, Martin. As always, as John pointed out, another on-topic module of the week, which we always appreciate. How can folks get in touch with you or suggest another module of the week?
We are always happy to get nominations for Module of the Week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or folks can reach out to me as ManClue on all of the Drupal and social channels.
Awesome. Great. See you next week. Thanks.
See you then.
All right. Before we get to our primary topic, we had a bit of a cliffhanger last week when we were talking about Spain versus England. Baddy, do you have an update for us?
Yeah. So the prediction in the last show was correct. Spain did win, and Jamal did score a goal. And yesterday, because we taped this a couple of days before it gets aired, Spain became the European champion. And just like predicted, and it was well deserved. They were just honestly the better team throughout the whole European Championship. We had Spain had the best youngest player of the tournament, the best player of the tournament, the best team of the tournament. Like, it's amazing to see. So it's well deserved.
And from the America Cup side, we had less happy news. The Colombian team lost in extra time in the last 3 or 4 minutes after the game was delayed for almost an hour and a half. So it was a late night. Although the player of the tournament was one of the Colombian players, James Rodriguez, was named as player of the tournament for the America Cup. So small consolation. But
just out of curiosity for a non footballer, why was it delayed?
Well, the people that managed the tournament didn't hire enough security or people to manage tickets, so they only opened one gate. It was 90 degrees out, so people were starting to faint and pass out, and so people were pushing to get in. So there started to be a crowd crush, and to prevent people from dying, they opened the gates, and then people that didn't have tickets took advantage. And I think they estimated almost 7,000 people that didn't have tickets got in, and a lot of people that did have tickets couldn't. And so they delayed it to try to kick out a lot of the people. But
weed out the 7,000 people that didn't have tickets.
It was way over capacity. It was a bit of a disaster. But anyway, all that aside, we watched it with friends. It was fun until it was depressing. If you watch soccer with people that they're a soccer fan, their team isn't winning, it's not as much fun. But
True.
It's still a good time to hang out with friends. So
I've watched Ted Lasso. I understand.
Yes, that's a great show. We love it.
All right, so on to our primary topic. Let's start with the title of the show. What is a preconfigured CMS or a preconfigured Drupal solution?
Should I take this one, Baddy, or do you want to take it?
No, you take it.
Okay.
Or should we argue about it in the beginning? Because no, just
I mean, preconfigured CMS solution. I mean, you don't want to just build the same thing over and over again. Yeah, especially if you're experienced Drupal developer, there's so many things under the hood that you have to get right. And if you compare the last, 10, 20 or however many projects, you would just quickly see that you just develop your own ways how you like to build things. Yeah, how you put them together that work well, and so forth. So that's what we mean when we say preconfigured CMS or Drupal solution, and essentially that's also what Starshot is doing. Starshot is just compiling a bunch of functionality together in a smart way to just allow people, especially people that are new to Drupal, to not having to build things from scratch, but instead having a high starting point, from which on you start building your solution.
So
I would
go ahead, Baddy.
No, I will also add to it, so the thing is we have 50,000 modules in Drupal, right? So it's also very expensive for an agency owners and those who are leading agencies that everything is just built differently. And so not just like for the fact of that, just to reuse what we've done before and get that know-how, but also like to be able to have consistency so we can actually move our people around, so everything is built the same way. So I think like there's many of those that we have actually seen. So it's not just good for those who are buying the CMS in the end. And by the way, people come to us and they expect things out of CMSs. They expect certain functionality to be there, and they don't expect that they have to pay for us configuring this functionality. So that's like what we call a pre-configured Drupal. We've already done what we think is 80% needed by everyone.
So to Drupalize this a little bit, and we'll talk more about these terms later on in the show, but like we're kind of talking about maybe an install profile or a distribution, or maybe in the future something else like a recipe, right? When we're kind of talking about this, it's some sort of predefined set of configuration and modules that an agency, your agency in this case, is using, so that everything's kind of on that same starting point, right?
Correct.
And I can see maybe like, so we have been the past part of building distributions, and some distributions have been used by very many companies. And I think like maybe Christoph, you want to explain a little bit like what the road and the journey has been from actually going away from building it in a way how that is done, because we've also had the time in our life that we have had to build out many profiles and distributions from the client projects that come in, and they were basically locked into this, And Christoph, I think like 2 to 3 years ago, you and the team, you said like there's a different way of how to build this than doing it in that way, right?
Yeah. I mean, back then when this was first introduced, like profiles distributions, this was a cool thing because it allowed us to ship ready-made solutions to clients. But the point is, it's open source, and there's so many options, and like each project kind of develops like a ways of its own forward. Yeah, new functionality comes, existing functionality is maybe not needed anymore, and if you just have like something large, like a profile with lots of dependencies, you cannot get this out anymore. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I'm not even talking about like Drupal 7.8 migrations or something like this. Yeah, and so that was like a really, really cool mechanism back then, but like it just wasn't fit for the task what you want to achieve, because you want to have pre-configured things, but they need to be pluggable. Yeah, they need to be installable and uninstallable, and that was the hard part. Yeah, and so what we had compiled, we a couple of years back started taking apart, and and make everything completely modular. So for example, you just not every page needs to be optimized for search engines. Yeah, so like if it's an intranet, you don't care about meta tags, and or maybe like other optimization options. So if you just configure a package that just contains this functionality, it needs to be enableable. Yeah, and you also need to be able to disable it again, to remove it again. Yeah, and this goes for everything. So this goes for like, let's say if you build with paragraphs and you have like all these ways of displaying content, so maybe you need a gallery, maybe you need a slideshow, maybe you need FAQ sections, or like counting up facts and figures, or text image, or videos of all sorts. And but not every page needs the same. So you have to be able to like turn it on and turn it off. Same goes for media, goes for search API. This really goes for everything. And so we just like ripped that all apart and made this all into individually installable modules that you can also uninstall. Yeah, so like when we set something up, we have like a very, very small core profile, and then you just like add all the modules that you want. They come with their own configurations, their own fields, and everything like completely isolated. Yeah. And of course, they're smart. They understand like what else exists, like how do I tie in there if there's maybe a classification taxonomy that I also want to reuse because it's for classifying all the content that we have, let's say. So it just like ties itself into that. So contains these logics too. And we did that in preparation for recipes, because that came up exactly around this time, like 3-4 years ago, and we were just involved in the, or like at least closely watching like what happened there. And now we're actually at the point we are now transitioning like all these small isolated modules into recipes, and And yeah, it's really nice also with what's going on in Drupal, because that would allow us to, for example, contribute some of these recipes as well. And
So
Yeah, I think there's also two big drawbacks that you didn't mention to profiles and distributions. That is important to highlight why I think, because you're not the only agency I've seen moving away from kind of maintaining their distributions. With distributions, you are tied to updating your modules when the distribution maintainer updated them, right? With that, I mean, there were ways around that, but if a security update came out and you didn't control the distribution and the person maintaining the distribution was on vacation, you just couldn't do the security update for your site without jumping through a lot of hoops.
Very true.
Similarly, on the install profile side, there's some modules that just assume your site is standard profile. And if it's not, it just breaks. And you can't, well, now you can uninstall profiles and change them, but until like, what was it, a month and a half ago, you couldn't. So if you use, in my experience, I just always use standard. Like even if I didn't really want it, I just use standard because it caused so many problems. But I think, you mentioned recipes. I think one of the really nice things about recipes is it allows you to really start to take advantage of the configuration management system. The one thing that's always been missing about config management is what you used to have with features, which is what you're building here, which is you could say, I have this feature, I want to install on this, I built it on this site, I want to now migrate it to this other site, let me just install that feature and it's there. Config management, and I understand why they changed the scope, but when it was originally sold, that's how config management was sold in Drupal 8 too, right? You could manage your different environments, but you could also move configuration between sites. But because of scope and complexity reasons, I mean, you can see how much effort the recipe piece took. Like they took apart the composability and moving between sites part of config management, and it became just a deployment thing. And recipes is filling that gap. So I'm really excited about recipes. I think it's pulling in something that Drupal's been needing and missing for a long time. But yeah, I think those other two things were two really big drawbacks in distributions and profiles that really push people to move away from them too.
Yeah. But what you have to think about, like when you build something like this, it's a highly conceptual thing, because you need to, like, I mean, you wouldn't build a pre-configured CMS if you didn't have like a certain amount of configurations that you actually want to ship together or that you want to reuse. Yeah. And then it becomes quite complicated too. I mean, like average site builder, you add a new content type and then you have all the taxonomies already available. So use them again, works for this particular use case. But if you just like think about pre-configuring this, you have to make careful decisions, like, because that would introduce a dependency. Or you make something smart that, like, if that exists, then I want to add this configuration or not. Yeah. So but it's actually a conceptual thing. Like apart from the technology, which I fully agree with, that like finally we have the tools to just make that work in the right way. Yeah, it's not an easy task to, like build this correctly.
So I want to take a time out for a second here, because I think like there are two ways of looking at this from like, our audience listening to this podcast, right? One might be like an agency owner who's like, oh, we don't really do this. We kind of like build it from scratch every time, right? And and then the other aspect is maybe somebody in more of a business role, right, who's saying like, oh, well, I don't know if my agency does this, and if they do, like, what questions should I ask them, right? And I'm wondering, like, as far as the audience goes, right, or the sales pitch to say, right, like when you guys have a pre-configured CMS that you're selling to businesses, right? I'm wondering, is there a specific type of business that you guys are looking at? Or do you have kind of different versions of your CMS for different kind of verticals, right? And based on the first part of my question, right, would you advise if an agency is looking to do something like this that they take that same approach? Or and maybe down the road later on in the episode we talk more about recipes, and maybe that changes your answer. But I'm just curious as to, like, when somebody's thinking about a pre-configured CMS and bringing that into their agency, like, How do you guys sell that?
Yeah, I think if I can, like, I do most of the selling, and Christoph also sells a lot, and we have also a good sales team. But the thing is, like, it's just a competitive market. And if we don't sell, like, so when we come into sales pitches, we basically demo this. We give the client access to their CMS. They can completely try it out. They can like see it. We have even configured it for them with like some basics, like logo and colors and all this stuff. And because this is actually what they expect. So if you come in the pitch and you talk about like all the things that you're gonna do, then it is just a different sell. So coming into a pitch and selling something that is already like, and you can touch it, you can feel it, you can get it both traditional Drupal or you can get it headless. Like that is just a big thing. And there's more components in there that we have like built, like, which you can go into a little bit later, like design system and stuff like that. Like there is so much more to it. So what our audience is basically enterprise clients. It's like those who need something that is already, having all of the requirements that an enterprise CMS needs to have. And on top of that also comes with all the stuff out of the box. And what best would be if it doesn't cost, then they only have to pay for innovation. And that's what we also state on our website. Like you pay for the stuff that you need to have different, like, because all the stuff that we built, this is what you definitely just need out of the box.
So you almost have an ability to walk into a sales pitch meeting with a rough demo of like of the site that you might be building, right? Like, hey, you are getting 80% of this out of the box, and we're going to build the 20%, and that's what we're gonna, we're basically going to sell to you, right?
Now I can spoil how we do it. Basically, like we do actually go extra mile, and we often put like front enders on the demos, because it is so easy to like style it towards like some kind of, so we can actually go not just with a rough demo, we can go with a pretty good demo, because the rebuilding of something or some vision that we have for the client, like it's really easy to build that up for them when we go into the demo, and that impresses them, and they can have a look and they can test it and just see how it feels. And that's a big thing for the evaluator, because the evaluator is going to be either somebody from marketing or from IT. And they are like, they need to get the trust element checked off. And that has been very successful.
So that's super interesting to me. So like you're almost doing pre-work, but the pre-configured CMS is making it so easy for you to do it that pre-work is helping you to potentially gain that business.
Yeah, and for curiosity, like for both of you, you can go to trydrupal.onexinternet.de, and you can actually just press get a demo, and you will within 2 minutes get a demo instance that is valid for 2 hours for you, where you can actually also log in and you can play with it, and you can see the design system in action, you can see the paragraphs in action, you can see front-end editing in action, and you can just do that now. So like that is also like a big thing for us to, there's no hassle of creating a demo or anything like that. It's just, it takes 2 minutes and the demo instance is there.
From an agency perspective now, right? If I'm an agency owner and I'm listening to this right now, and I'm like, there is a path for me to get to from pre-configured CMS to like integrating it into my sales process and kind of being able to kind of mimic, for lack of a better word, this flow. And maybe it's not, like, hey, it's going to happen over the next month, but like it is something that somebody could strive for. Sounds like you guys are having great success with that.
Yeah, and like a big shout out there to Christoph and his team. Like, you have to just say, like, we spent 2,000 to 3,000 hours per year only on this. Like, this is nothing small. And the thing is, like, but also has like all the features for the enterprise. And the most important, like, what, not just from the selling perspective, but it's easier to sell, but to have developers that always work on the same base, that actually can jump into every project and they know exactly how everything is built, because there's best practices around it. We have an academy in-house that people learn how to like build things on this, and it's all Drupal, but it's obviously like we've configured it in an opinionated way for us. So
as an architect, I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to architect a solution that has reusability and this that helps the sales machine and all of this stuff. And you just identified that it wasn't like, oh, we did it in like a week. It's something that you've nurtured and you've built into this thing.
And it's one of those things where it's both on the front end and the back end with a lot of these tools that you're building. You're probably not, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're using things like variables and CS variables and build tools that, you're customizing that demo for that particular client, but you're not spending hundreds of hours refining stuff. Like you can tweak a couple colors, put their logo in there, and like you don't have to design the accordion for them because you have an accordion. Now, on a new pass, you might customize it, make it a little fancier for them or something to make it special, but you kind of have those tools. But so the individual investment for a demo isn't as high as it would be if you were starting from scratch, but all that investment happened beforehand, and you have to be, there's a lot of people in the Drupal world that have skills to build something like that, but you have to have a lot of resources to be able to invest in a product, and you have to have, the leadership to like focus on something like that. That's the dream, right? But to see it executed and working is pretty exciting. Because a lot of this stuff this stuff has been theoretically possible in Drupal for years and years and years, but it takes so much discipline to kind of maintain for years for such a large team. That in itself is pretty impressive. It's pretty special.
I mean, and if you speak like from the ongoing development, I mean, it's a lot of work to maintain it too.
Yeah,
because there's lots of functionality. Everything has to be compatible. People have to use it. Needs to be documented. The build systems are just currently evolving, and so like it's not like if you were to plan something like this, you probably have to start like as small as possible. Like focus on core functionality, use the functionality that's most generalizable that you can find. Yeah, and then build that, and then establish a procedure around being able to maintain it. So of course, Drupal has releases, then you depend on a lot of modules that have releases. And then you have your own custom functionality. Most likely it would be like in the theme layer or like in the way like you just build your editorial UIs. Yeah, so you have to maintain this and improve this all the time. So it's just a lot of work. But like you can also look at it from the perspective that software developers, they don't enjoy building same things over and over again. What they actually enjoy is building new things, innovative things, or what they also enjoy, that's why we do open source, build stuff that other people can use and they can just be proud of that what they invented, other people are using.
Before we move on, Drupal 11 is coming out in 2 weeks. So I'm curious, when do you expect your internal, do you have a name for your distribution? I don't know that you're willing to share.
Internally we called this remember like a couple of years back everything was DXP, like internally we talk about our DXP, but actually I feel that's like kind of I don't know, like
it's our one next CMS. But
now we just talk about I
actually like to one more point as an agency owner, like, and my learnings from that. If I go to a pitch and I say like, and we have this 1X CMS that we want to sell to you, they're all like, is that a product? Are we now locked into something?
That's the question.
Yeah. So, sorry, that was your question.
No, go. You keep going.
No, it is like, so what the learning has been in the past couple of years is that to talk about it as a pre-configured Drupal. You can go here and try Drupal. You can try this pre-configured Drupal. Don't configure Drupal from scratch. Don't. And the reason is because we need to go into these pitches and say, hey, we're asking for Drupal. We are giving you a Drupal that already has all these awesome things, and here's a list of it, and you can look at it, you can try it out. And if you don't like it, it doesn't matter, it's still yours. And there's going to be no problem of any other agency or company to actually come in and take it over. Of course, it's difficult to take a project over, but that's just generally difficult. Yeah. But we still say that in the pitch. So we say like, hey, you're not going to be stuck with 1X forever. So that's why we've been moving away from like calling it 1X CMS or, it's just like our pre-configured Drupal or pre-configured
It's a flavor.
CMS.
It's a flavor as opposed to a product.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So going back to one of your comments, Christoph, you mentioned you still have dependencies on on contrib modules and core. Like, what does the upgrade path to Drupal 11 look like for you? I mean, do you expect to be on Drupal 11 by the end of the year? Do you think it will take longer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, if not like almost by the time when it comes out. It's really a standard Drupal in there.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and it's just configuration, and everything is just like completely standard. We only use modules that are good, and if the modules that we depend on, so for example, so one module that we use a lot is it's called front-end editing, where we just simply expose like the edit form of arbitrary entities in the front
I
end.
might have talked about it before in earlier shows.
Click on a button, brings up the edit form. Yeah. Okay. So in order to make this work, and recently we added the functionality that it automatically previews. So you just like bring up the form on the side, you start typing in the text field, and it changes on your website as you type. Yeah, and that's also again standard Drupal. It uses Drupal's preview mechanism, which is awesomely architected, I must say. Yeah, and then there's a contrib module that's called All Entity Preview that was created by some Ukrainian guys, for their own purpose. It's nicely done, and now we just co-maintain that together with them because like we use this front-end editing everywhere, and we want to be able to auto preview anything that we just change directly in the front end, and then we need this module. So in this case, like here we have to do still something extra, yeah. But in most of the cases, like we try to use like what's standard in Drupal, yeah, and if search API is compatible with Drupal 11, so is our decoupled search that we just use everywhere.
So you'd mentioned that a lot of the stuff is pick and choose, right? And for certain features, Christoph, it's pretty easy to conceptualize, right? So you can kind of have a self-contained blog. You can have a self-contained article page. You can even, at some degree, have a self-contained search. But when it comes to like much more complex features like commerce, it's a little bit harder to conceptualize having a self-contained commerce platform. Do you have like separate starting points for your system, or is everything composable under, or do you just not do commerce sites? How do you handle
We
those
actually
types of
do a
things?
lot of commerce sites. So yes, we have that all on the roadmap. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking. So what I'm saying is like if you just think about like any Drupal website that has like certain level of complexity, be that commerce or not. I mean, you just have to configure users and roles and permissions. You have to build editorial experience, like make a nice editorial theme. Then you have to build a front end that needs to be compatible with the corporate CI. Then you need to have some kind of display functionality. Then you want to have a search, and you need search engine optimization functionality. And now I'm forgetting 10 other things that you just have to build in too, and here goes already like days and days and days of development and configuration, and interaction with the client of like, and ironing out all the little details. Yeah. So I think like it sounds easier than it is, and it sounds smaller than it is to have all these things ready. So we usually tell people that we have 80% of what you want ready. And if you just look at a project, at least from our experience, it is like this and has been for many years, like 80% is just the same. 20% is like the innovation. 20% is like what makes your commerce web store different. And like if you now take Drupal Commerce, for example, we built quite a lot, and we have had several attempts of just making pre-configurations, but we always ended up just not persisting them because I mean, like it's so quickly set up the base, yeah, and it so quickly gets into the details of, I mean, there's custom payment, there's custom shipment, there's custom products, there's custom rules, there's custom, you name it, yeah, and so it wasn't really worth it for us. Our audience for commerce would not be like the small Shopify sites, and that's why I say it's on the roadmap. So we are actually thinking about compiling something, that could just be used out of the box if you really wanted to sell maybe merch or merchandise articles or so, because then always have PayPal or Stripe or I don't know. So that I guess you could do, and but for the audience we're usually talking to, like that's not what they need, and so therefore we haven't built these kind of pre-configurations yet.
There were actually three pre-configurations that have been, or like modules that you then start with or not start with. One of them is just what what we talk about when you go on try Drupal.1x. It's just the typical CMS features. But then there is actually a different version for the headless. When a client comes to us and they say like, hey, we want a headless site. We have like front-end developers who need to create the stuff here. There is just a different type of CMS that you get, because the editor experience is just different. So you need like a way different type of editorial experience than in a traditional Drupal, where you're just with a previewing there of the stuff and all the stuff, because the theme is just, or the apps are completely elsewhere. So headless is one, and then the third thing is, I would say, intranet. So we actually created we compiled like these typical features for intranet, and we actually used the book module for some of the documentation, and there were actually like notifications in there. There's like user profiles that are a little bit more advanced. So I think like, and then commerce was always like, we have it, but like I think like what Christoph said, most of those projects are very individual anyways, and commerce comes out of the box is so powerful. So just turning that on is just enough to start with.
Okay. So this is interesting to me, because if I'm an agency owner, right? You've sold me on the fact that like Preconfigured is a great path forward, and like I'm not necessarily selling a service or a product, right? I'm selling it as like my organization's version of Drupal, right? I'm wondering though, as far as like kind of the building blocks of my Preconfigured CMS, right? It sounds like you guys are using modules that you're turning on for specific clients, right? You have the base module, and then maybe you have I think you just said it, Baddy, a module for like internet users, or a module for some other types of users. So this is all very module focused at this point in time, which makes sense, right? We already talked about kind of the downfall of distributions and profiles, right? So sticking to Drupal core there makes a lot of sense, and probably helping with the upgrade, right? But I'm wondering, thinking down the road, or maybe you're already thinking and doing this, is recipes something that like in the future you may move towards, as opposed to kind of having these modules that you're turning on and turning off?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we did that like 3-4 years ago. There was just preparation for that, because I mean, it's the right thing to do. Like regardless what technology you use for like building your pre-configurations, they need to be modular and pluggable. Yeah, and you need to be able to turn them on and off, add the code and remove the code. Yeah. And at the moment it's still modules, but like some of these modules really only have like install files. Like we have stripped it down as much as that. And these are the first ones we're changing to recipes. So we're just like a little bit waiting for the right point in time to do so. And because obviously that changes like all our upgrade procedures, that changes like our deployment and build procedures and installation procedures and so forth. So that's why we have been like a little bit postponing it. But now with the advent of Starshot, because there's some stuff that we really can contribute. I mean, you just like put together like set of functionality X, Y, that we would be happy to share, and that with recipes we will be able to share that.
I bet it also makes that sales pitch a little bit easier, right? Because as Baddy said, when we were talking about like you want to position it as your version of Drupal, right? People tend to get a little weirded out, at least myself personally, when I do an audit of a Drupal site and I see like the XYZ company module, I'm kind of like, well, what's this thing doing? Like that makes me super nervous, right?
Yes.
And now with recipes, you guys could basically run a recipe, install a whole bunch of modules and config, and then be like, oh, it's just Drupal and the Drupal ecosystem. There's nothing, specific to us in there, right?
Correct.
I would like to give you like a little idea of like what this is, because I just opened here like a local instance. So for example, like we ship like a content type for page, for news, for event. It's very, very similar, but they are distinct. And for us, like news and blog is the same. That's what you mentioned earlier as Nadia, Nick. Then we have an employee. Then we have we have all kind of display modules like accordions, like files, galleries, grid system, headline, iframe, image text, and remote video slideshow, tabs,
A lot of them.
multi-columns, you know what I mean? And they're all just really isolated things, so if you just want to have tabbed content, tab can be with tabs on top or tabs on the side. Yeah, and then you can stick in there arbitrary things that you have available. Inside could be text, could be image text, could be videos, and what you want. Yeah, and so these are the things we are talking about. So they mostly consist of configuration, sometimes a little bit of logic. So it's really prepared for like migrating this to or moving this over to recipes, and then we can also contribute them.
We've been spending a lot of time talking about some of the features and the value add. I'm curious about some of the nitty gritty and some of the issues that I've run into with other agencies that are either actively building something similar to this or have their own kind of flavor, and that is theming. So I imagine you guys have a design system, at least for the base, and then you have some sort of customization on top of that per client. But how do you? And you mentioned that you have a process for the demos. How do you handle theming in the world of a pre-configured CMS?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because always I think, or like in our experience, like you spend most of the time making the website look nice. Yeah, I mean Drupal is just so powerful. You can build stuff, but then it has to look like what your clients expect. And when design systems became like a thing, also maybe 5-6 years ago when that was, then we started breaking our designs down into reusable components, following like atomic design and the likes. Yeah. And so we have to separate this into a design system which is completely lives separately, which with a nice benefit. We can use this in a traditional coupled Drupal with Twig, but we can also use the same in a headless Drupal with React, which is what we would use, or anyone else with any other JavaScript library. And the design system we built is built with web components, so it's really isolated, encapsulated, and compatible with like any front end technology that you want to use. Yeah. And so therefore now in our front end layer, we have a custom theme that we ship, but it just only contains Twig files and they place web components on pages. I mean, not everything is in the design system. And if you think about like complex layout that you would not build as a component in the design system, so that would live in Twig or in your decoupled app. But everything else that's out there, just what is rendering like a card, a button, galleries, slideshow, overlays, badges, and so forth. So that stuff is just that's there. And for these, what we've done mainly for demo purposes, but also for customization purposes. So usually front end consists of like 3 or 4 base colors with shades. Yeah, most of the designs are built like this. Yeah, and so that's what we have. I mean, also if you think about like if you just have like a series like on a single page application, that usually change the color to kind of like show coherency between content elements. Yeah, so that's what we have from scratch, and that we can actually override with CSS variables. So that's mainly for theming, for demo purposes. Yeah, so that we can quickly just turn on the page, change the logo, and adjust like the color scheme to match like what somebody is seeing the demo just has available. Yeah, and but it's also really valuable for just like customizing this.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
I wonder. So back in my agency days when we would build Drupal sites, the front end theming of the project usually took the most amount of time, right? Implementing that theme. I'm wondering, based on what you've built and what your pre-configured CMS does out of the box, I'm wondering a couple of things. Are the colors for that, are the color variables for that coming out of Drupal itself, or is that something a front-end developer is building into their CSS? And then I'm also wondering, like, how has it cut down the amount of front-end development time that it takes to kind of like get a site out the door?
Both are really good questions. So we allow for overriding colors directly in Drupal, but that's really for demoing purposes. So you wouldn't, I mean, that would just be wrong for a professional website that you have to log into Drupal to just make your red more red. Yeah, so I mean, like in a production site that lives in the design system or the theme layer or wherever that lives. Yeah, but like not as a button in your CMS backend. Yeah, I mean, like, has it become more efficient to build the front ends like this. I'm not so sure like how valid that question is, because like front ends have changed a lot.
Yeah.
Clients have matured a lot, and usually you work on budgets. Yeah, somebody says, okay, I have the budget XYZ available, and I need to achieve this. And then you just do as much as possible, and maybe the spread between like backend, front end, and integrations is similar as it was before. Yeah, you just maybe you just get either further in the visuals or more robust in the underlying technology, because it's not we're not quick fixing front ends. We're building design systems for clients that they can reuse. So if they just build brand pages and other technologies, they just use the same design system and still works. Or we do microsites where we just inject like other technologies and they use the same design system. It works. Yeah.
And if I can add to it, like, so obviously,
I meant microservices architectures in which on a Drupal site, apps inject themselves reusing the design system from the main website and still works. Yeah.
And I wanna say something to this too, like now talking about it from a sales perspective. So this is now all like the design system that is already like fully accessible to anyone that wants to take a look at it on try.drupal.onyxinternet.de/design-system, but it's also the link there. You can actually access the design system. You can see everything. What you cannot see is, unfortunately yet, is actually the Figma library that is behind every single component, which is also connected into the design system. So it means like the optimization, and we've been actually going on the DrupalCon in Europe and like to all the dev days and writing article about like how do you optimize the process from the design, like from the requirements from the client to the designs in Figma that then fit to the design system, and then that goes and actually is consistent through all of it. And what Christoph said is like when we build a button, for example, it's a component, web component, and that can be used then in any CMS system that the client is using, because they can reuse that button and they can also do it in their Next.js app. And we have many of those clients that actually are using the same design system, but in different technologies.
So that's super interesting. So you're bringing the design system kind of with the pre-configured CMS. So like I can see a lot of clients saying like, oh, that's great. I don't have a design system. Now I can build on top of your design system, or maybe you enhance the design system to meet their needs, because they make sense for the greater system, right? What happens though, being devil's advocate here, if I'm a company that already has a design system and I'm like, hey, your thing kind of looks like it does most of this stuff, but I have my own design system and it's already used in a bunch of places. Can that be integrated?
That's really great, because like our theme is made for working with a design system. So in the Twig templates, somewhere you want to display a card, and that at the moment calls our card. And if your design system has a card, we just use that instead.
So you just switch them up.
Exactly. We actually do that quite a lot. So like professional clients, they often have a design system available. Yeah, and so then we just have to use that, and we just ready for it from the architecture already.
I think that's actually one of the benefits of single directory components that is coming out too, because single directory components are technically an extra layer on the theming side, right? But you can do just the pure HTML in the SDC. And so all of the Drupal field mapping to the single directory component happens in the normal like paragraph field twig templates and stuff. But if you're using single directory components as a go-between, switching design systems becomes way easier, because then you don't even have to do, like, a lot of times people integrate them in the twig template and then they have to like tweak how the logic works for the new component. But if you have a single directory component, you're just swapping out HTML and maybe remapping the variables for the new variables. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one question that I've had as we've been going through the show is, you've mentioned that you kind of use this as a starting point and then build the extra 20% functionality customization on top. How do you make sure that piece is backwards compatible? Because I imagine you still kind of update the underlying system as you're moving forward for security updates and all that kind of stuff. But how do you make sure the customizations don't get wiped out or interfere or complicate your life down the road?
No,
How do you kind of keep those in sync?
it's a very good question. I think it goes, or from my perspective, it goes back to, I mean, you just can't make your pre-configured CMS too large or too complex or too integrated or too single purpose configured. Yeah. So you need to build things that are really reusable and optional, like the tabs example that we had before, or maybe search engine optimization configuration, or sitemap configuration, or standard roles, or like media types, or the things that really are used everywhere. Those are the ones you have to go after, because they are really in every single project. And from our perspective, there's enough work there already. But if you focus on these, I mean, still a lot of things can go wrong. Like in projects, you kind of use things or change things or misuse things. Yeah. So we have built quite a culture of like reviewing and collaboration inside of our company around that, so that we build stuff in the right way. Yeah. But that's exactly the critical point. If you just want to have like something reusable across your team and across projects and over time, that's exactly where you have to be really careful.
Okay.
So it's more modular, basically. You're really embracing the modular architecture to say like, hey, we kind of have this module for that, this module, and not module in the Drupal sense, but like, set of configuration for this, set of configuration for that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
correct.
And of course, if it's just install files, I mean, that's not going to ever overwrite anything unless you write an update hook to rebuild that anyway. So you're more in the recipe world where you kind of apply it and then you don't think about it again. So any updates would be like logic design or things like that.
Yes.
So let's talk more about that future state, near future state of Drupal, I guess, because recipes are here, right? But like, I'm wondering, Starshot is on the horizon. It's coming, right? We've already talked about how you plan to kind of shift to recipes, which makes complete sense to me. But I'm wondering, like, is there a future, right, where instead of having 1x CMS, right, you are saying, hey, we're installing Starshot with the 1x recipes that pre-configure it for e-commerce or pre-configure it for an internet service provider or some other use case, right? Is that kind of maybe the future vision of this?
Could be. I mean, let's see what Starshot brings. I think like a big difference is what Baddy said earlier. It's about the audience. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Yeah,
Right.
and like Starshot is just really awesome for letting evaluators and like people that start building from scratch, have like a good entry point. So
Yeah.
fits these two audiences. For us, the audience is firstly a different type of client, and secondly, a different type of developer. I mean, this is our internal team. This is our tools, our workflows, our things that make us better. And like, and really, it's. I mean, if you just think from design system to theme layer to like Drupal, that's a lot of complexity already, and you have to be ready for this. And it's not for everyone. And there's so many questions and so much collaboration and help going on in our team already, and we just only do that. Yeah. So I guess like, I mean, there are just differences.
Let me ask you a follow-up question there that just dawned on me, right? We talked about the level of effort that your team has taken to develop this and build this solution, right? If I were like a new agency and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, oh, wow, this sounds really cool. Like, it seems like the Drupal roadmap is making this sort of pre-configuration a lot easier going forward with recipes and maybe Starshot, but like specifically recipes, right? Like, it sounds like maybe you could get to a pre-configured CMS faster. Is that fair to say?
I think like, so the technology is definitely better. So what we've built in the last 4 years was we've been working around that we didn't have the recipe mechanism available yet. So we've built exactly the same, but just not with recipes because it wasn't available. Right. And so now we're changing, but it's not so much a technology question. It's more a conceptual and engineering question, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. You have to think like, what is it that you want to have in there? Do you want to have like, I have it open? Do you want to have email logging in there? Like if you send emails, and they are maybe even formatted, you need to log them somehow. directly on the live system, you know?
Yeah.
And, that's functionality. Like, you both know how to build this right now, but both of you are thinking of this differently, and that's not even what we have built. Yeah, so we already have these solutions here in the room, and
Right.
so you have to choose, like, what is it that you want to build and you want to have in there.
So it's
Which is
structure and architecture as much as it is implementation.
Correct.
yeah, where you would say like governance, and that is actually what we have learned from,
Yeah.
and we've also been writing about this of like how we can contribute to Starshot is like, how do you make a decision of like bringing something in there?
Mhm.
That's not just a decision that a developer just takes, like, hey, I'm gonna put in this module. It's like, no, we have to go through sales. We need to talk about, does it make sense? Like, are our editors, we need to speak to our project managers who are speaking to the editors. We need to like, and also check out if it's if the module is stable on Drupal.org. Is it maintained? Like, do we have maintenance over it? Like, there's all these things that need to be answered yes to before we actually put it in anywhere. So we don't just like jump on. And that is going to be, that is a challenge at the moment in Starshot. Like, we as a community need to somehow agree on this set of modules, and there's some people going to be disagreeing with that, and others are going to be happy. So, but that's the beauty of open source. Like, you don't have to use it. You can also just use something else.
Yeah, it's super interesting to me because, for the last 2 years, I've been building a platform, and those are the same sorts of questions you have to ask because you have a wide range of people using it, and you're like, okay, is it good for them? Is it good for all of them? Like, how do we add this and not break everybody's thing? So it makes a lot of sense that like that level of governance and that level of architecture go into this, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that the module development or the recipe development going forward is a small part of it, but without that architecture and governance, it could be unuseful, right?
I wanna say something positive about like, so what Starshot, if Starshot is gonna select like these 100 modules or 50 modules that are gonna be in there, we need to actually create some governance around how these modules will be maintained. And this is also something that we are trying to contribute to, is like, we have to be, I think we talked about this in our last call, or, I think we have to be really good in like making sure that those modules that are selected will not be abandoned at some point just because a person goes somewhere else. We need to make sure there's companies behind it. There's a larger ecosystem. There's also like, there needs to be, they need to answer on security issues and do this stuff right away. Like, so there is a governance model that we in Drupal need to create. But the good thing is about it is that we are going to have a very strong set of modules that are not just like, it's not just the core and the Wild West 50,000 modules. It's going to be core. And then there's like, these contrib modules that have been included in Starshot. And then the other 49,500 modules. So I think like, we are going to get maybe more focus on contributing to those important things. So like, as a company, I would maybe select to contribute to one of them, like we are doing. We select to involve ourselves. So I think it could be very positive also for the sustainability of Drupal and open source.
Yeah, and I think that's really valuable. I think that's an interesting take. It's not something I'd thought about on the Starshot side, but as somebody kind of consuming Drupal from, I'm going to say distribution, even though it's not a distribution, but from a distribution standpoint, that is something that you absolutely evaluate. But I also want to highlight again, I kind of highlighted this a little bit earlier, but I want to highlight again that a big part of why I think what you've been doing is successful is the discipline that goes into it. Because I've worked with teams building design systems. I've worked with teams building. In fact, I'm working with a team right now that's working on kind of building this for themselves. And it's a little bit broader because it's also WordPress and not just Drupal. But one of the things that's always been a challenge, and they're very dedicated to building this as well, is you're building a project, you have a need, and sometimes you realize, oh, this is a bug with the base installation. We need to fix this. But you also have to have the discipline to then go back and fix that and evaluate if that's something that should percolate to everybody else or not. Because there might be some sites that are depending on the improper way of doing something, or maybe or for example, like paragraphs, maybe paragraphs goes away tomorrow and now there's a new way of doing things. Like you have to evaluate how do you handle 5, 6, 7 years worth of paragraphs that, or, the experience builder, how do you evaluate replacing the current system with experience builder? So, a lot of the magic there, like I said, is the discipline and the leadership that comes with it, saying like, this is the way we're going to do it, but also following through over multiple years, multiple projects. It's, the individual decisions aren't that gargantuan, but the consistency for years to be able to maintain that is impressive. And for our listeners, you got, there's other teams that have done that, I'm sure, but since you guys are the ones on the show, we're talking about 1X Internet. So we have something kind of unique today. I think you guys are only the third couple that have been on the show together, and you guys both run a Drupal agency and are both very involved in the Drupal community. Did you guys meet over Drupal?
Actually, it's a nice one because we did not meet. We were both working in actually in venture capital. We come both with a computer science background, and we were working in like analyzing, deals and like from the companies how their software is built and all this stuff. And we met at a conference. So the nice thing is that I think like we moved in together, and in the same month or something, Christoph was already like, hey, there's this new thing like called Drupal. That was in 2007. Like, Baddy, I think we can like, do you, should we build something with it? And we started actually, the three of us that own the company together today. In 2007, we started to build something with Drupal in our free time. We were like all working as Java developers or working in venture capital or doing something like completely different. But in the evenings, we were working with Drupal. And that was probably about 4.7, Christoph?
Yeah, around about that time.
So Drupal has actually been like a huge part of our life. And interestingly, in 2011, we found that like we started to like see like, we have kids now, we can, start to do something more of it. And then in 2013, we founded the company. And in 2014, we first went to our Drupal event. So wow. We've been working with Drupal for 7 years. We built up a company, or we started a company. We actually built some sites, and actually for some large sites for the Icelandic TV and for the city of Reykjavik and stuff. And our first Drupal event, because we didn't know there was a community behind it. Like we didn't know that there's a, we like there's this Drupal.org and there's all these like chats and stuff. And then we went to there, and we like remember we sat there in DrupalCon Amsterdam. We didn't know anyone, and like we were just like a little bit like eating our lunch in the corner because it was so overwhelming. Everybody knew each other. The exhibition room was full with people talking with each other, and we didn't know anyone. And I remember at some point, Dries walked by and said, probably wondering why these two people are sitting there in the corner eating a sandwich. And he said like, hi, are you having fun? And we were like, oh yes, of course. Like, Dries is talking to us. And it was such a nice, like, and he like welcomed us. And then like we met Morten from the, in Denmark. And, and then all these people, they started to like grab us in. And it was such a nice moment. And like from this DrupalCon Amsterdam 2014, like we haven't missed a DrupalCon since. And our kids have been now like they've been to Fronted United, they've been to Drupal camps. They're like, they probably know more about Drupal than many others. That are like, they're actually pretty involved, and they know all the like usernames and
that's hilarious.
That's a lot of fun.
So I'm wondering, as co-founders of an agency and being a couple, right? How do you guys manage to keep like the work life and home life like separate? Like, how do you prevent like talking about work stuff at the dinner table or I don't know, vice versa, talking about home stuff at the conference table?
I think it's a good question. So like you can't really separate it. I mean, like for us, when we founded the company, we actually set out of building like a company that we wish we had worked for when we were working for others. And it's just really it's a lot. I mean, we are almost 100 people, and it's just about the team. It's about the collaboration and the processes, and and how you do things, and for us, like that's what's really important. Yeah, to kind of, so we have breakfast with the children every morning, and we have like dinner with the children, so you don't work mad hours. Yeah, but we just like, it's really intense, it's really collaborative, and all the staff that we have, they stay really long. They work like multiple years with us. Yeah, and we have like almost no hierarchies. So everything's like project oriented, and and most of the time I'm actually working for somebody and not telling people what they should do. Yeah, and because I'm just like in the role of solution architect in a project, or like in in R&D, like reviewing something, or I don't know. And so and having said that, it's kind of like, it's a lot of fun. It's just also a passion. It's like we like to do that. So it's not something where you want to close the door because it's like so hard, and you just really want to shut your brain out. Yeah, so therefore we do bring it home. It is a big part of our life, but has been for more than 10 years, and I think it's just okay. I mean, it's not the only thing we do. We have hobbies too, and but
and one
it's
of
kind
the
of it's not like for me, I don't think of it as like, I mean, sorry, let me finish this one here, buddy. Like I mean, you spend 8 hours per day at work. Yeah, so, and you sleep for 8 hours, and for the rest of the 8 hours you also need to go shopping and like take a shower or something, meaning that like the most consistent time you have of your work life is with your colleagues. It's at work, so it might as well be the most awesome place that can be, given that it's work, of course. Yeah, and that is what we just try to do really good, and that as a result it makes, I mean, I actually enjoy doing this. I am passionate about it, and I just love this team, and I really like it. So therefore, like, I can also talk about it at night without that being like a difficult or annoying thing.
there are also benefits of working together as a couple. For example, like our weekends, we don't have to necessarily spend time together. So meaning like I can actually do my hobby and he can do, because we have different sports hobbies. Like I play golf and Christoph plays tennis. And like just because we are always together, it's also okay on the weekends not to be together. And I think like that's something that people don't realize, like, hey, that's actually different for those who are actually not working together. And then in the weekend, that's the time when they are together. But to Christoph's, like, I want to say one more thing is that we did learn it potentially the hard way, that after 6 o'clock or after 7 o'clock in the evening, there is only allowed to be like chatting about the nice things that are going on. So if you have an idea, or if you're like, hey, I was thinking about a feature that like, and then you're like, then you can go on it. If you're gonna come home at 7 o'clock and you're gonna be, talking, or like, if I come home and I'm like, in this project, like, oh, something went wrong, or like somebody was like something, or then like that's actually a no-go. And I think we've learned that probably the hard way, because for the first years, like we sometimes spent like evenings and weekends to actually speak about like all the difficult things that are going on. So we said like after 6, 7 o'clock, you can talk about Drupal, you can talk about the company, but we can only talk about like the cool things that we're doing, or the next cool things that we are focusing on. So, and that's also like I've been speaking a lot to Tiffany and George and Palantir, like I think they have the same thing. Like I think it is like you need to be speaking about these things at home, the nice things, because like that's where the ideas come. Because at work you're just working, and in the weekends when we're sitting and drinking a coffee, then actually the good ideas, they do come through. So therefore you want to have time to talk about it.
Man, I give you guys a lot of credit, because my wife and I have always agreed that I don't know if we could actually work together. Like we can run a family, and we're great, we're great partners at home, but like I don't know if we could work together. So I always give
helps
folks a lot of credit. God.
I think it helps a lot, because Christoph and I, we are actually pretty different. We are like, Christoph is like this visionary, like always like he comes to these crazy ideas of something that like we need to build, and like, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then as soon as he's like convinced me, then I'm all in, and then he starts on the next idea and I go and execute it. So like, or like I don't build it, like, but he's already built it, but I then go and sell it. So I think like we also have a very clear way of like who is good in what.
You guys stay in your lanes.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Well, we have complementary skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not only us. I mean, there's like we're 3 founders, and we have like one more person in management. We're all complementary. Like, and
Yeah.
I highly value this because, like, I mean, you can only get as so and so good like on your own. You need to have other great brains to be able to pick or to like put you into perspective or help you to make the right
Yeah.
decisions. Yeah, and so we have that between the two of us, but also in the management team. That's just very important.
Awesome.
Well, Baddy and Christoph, thank you for joining us. I feel like this show is one of those ones that could have gone for another 2 hours. I still have so many questions. We'll have to have you back sometime, but thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have questions or feedback? Reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal or by email with a show at talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/ddpromo. And Baddy, that does include DrupalCon Europe. If you wanted to post something, you can go there and promote it.
Of course. I will add it.
Get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest hosts, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing Become a Patron.
And I want to say thank you because I've been the guest host now for 4 weeks and it's been absolutely amazing and so enjoyable to be with the both of you and see how professional you are preparing this stuff and like, you know, getting all this done and like that you've done 460 shows already. Like, hey, big compliment. So thank you. And I will come anytime again. And thank you for including me. So yeah, awesome.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that so much. All right, Baddy, as we close out the show, if our listeners did want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, that's Baddy Sonja on all of the social media, LinkedIn and Drupal.org, and also in our company, onexinternet.de.
And Christoph, how about you?
You can find me on the Breidert, that's my last name, on Twitter and Drupal.org, and also on our website, onexinternet.de.
And John, how about you?
You can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, as well as Drupal.org. And you can find out about EPAM at EPAM.com.
And you can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
So if you've enjoyed listening, we have enjoyed talking.
Thanks,
See you guys
everyone.
next week.
Thank you.